Hey guys, so we're going to talk about soul retrieval in this little live video because it's been coming up lately and I've been doing a lot of them in my Moon Circle, like group healing subscription group, in my individual healings. I have been doing a lot of soul retrievals lately and I speak about it regularly, and like everybody knows what soul retrieval is, but I realize that most people probably don't know what it is, and it might like scare people because it sounds like really intense and scary. And it just like is kind of one of those things that nobody really talks about or shares that much about what it is. So I wanted to take a minute to, hey Ashley, to talk about soul retrieval and how it works, like what it is, why you might need one, how you can tell that you might need one, and basically the basics of it. So let's get started. Soul retrieval rests on the premise that we have a physical body, right? And our physical body is like the vessel that we're manifested in. But I like to think of our experience as multidimensional, and then we have these other bodies. And one of those bodies is our energy body, which is our energy system, our chakras, our aura. And then also I like to think of our other body as our spiritual body. Some people call it the emotional body. I kind of combine them into one thing, the spiritual emotional body, and I just call it the spiritual body. And that body stores like our past lives, our past experiences, our information from other lifetimes, traumas that we've had in this lifetime, things that have happened to us, our experiences, our emotions, all of that I consider as being stored in the spiritual body. And our spiritual body and our physical body are like this, and then our information from our spiritual body and information from our physical body, underlying all of that is our energy body. Okay, so our energy body receives information from our physical body, receives information from our spiritual body, and then we have our energy systems and our chakras, and energy can get messed up by stuff that is stored in our spiritual body and stuff that has happened to our spiritual selves. So soul retrieval has to do with what is happening in our spirit body, right? And so the way that I like to think about this is we have a soul, and when we incarnate, an aspect of that soul incarnates and becomes our spirit body that is embodied with us in this lifetime. And so what that means is that aspects of your soul can be incarnated into different lifetimes at the same time as now, because lifetimes are parallel and not past, because present, future, past, that is time, and linear time doesn't exist. And all of our lifetimes are happening concurrently right now, with different aspects of our soul broken up into different spirit bodies, living out different lifetimes. Okay. So soul retrieval. Soul retrieval is needed when your soul has experienced something called soul loss. And the idea of soul loss is that when something happens that is traumatic, and it doesn't have to be a huge event like a car crash or like a traumatic birth or something like that, although it can be like small little like traumas, emotional, intense things that happen to us that we don't have time to process in the moment that they happen. And basically what happens is part of our soul kind of segments off, and the way that I see it in my mind is it kind of like bubbles off and says, this part of myself in which this happened to at this exact moment, at this time and space, is going to go over here, and it's going to wait until you're ready to process it, and kind of wait. And it's almost like a time capsule where it gets locked in time at that place and at that time. So it can be throughout your lifetime, throughout childhood, it can be other lifetimes, it can be like there can be many other lifetimes where these parts of ourselves that have experienced something intense that we weren't able to process at the time that happened, get kind of like bubbled off and in its protective little encased little safety bubble, so that when we're ready to process what happened, we can come back to it and process it. And so this happens when like soul retrieval, soul loss is a protective thing that our soul and spirit does to protect us so that we can continue living on like day-to-day life. Like if something traumatic happens to you, somebody dies, for example, you need to go through the motions of life. Like, you need to take care of your kids, you need to like make meals, you need to shower, you need to do your job, you need to do all these things, and you like don't necessarily have time to sit in your grief for a month. Although like that'd be nice if we could, but like you still need to kind of go on with your life. And so you can't process, like you couldn't process it, right, all at that same time. Like, you experienced a trauma, you couldn't fully process it, you couldn't fully sit in it. And so what happened was your soul said, all right, you know what, you need to go and like move on with life. We're going to save this here for you so that when you're ready to process it and come back to it, it's going to be here. And so when you get to a point in your life where you're ready to face whatever that is, like whether you're going to face the trauma you experienced, you're going to finally do that father wound healing, you are going to finally, let me think of other examples. You're like, all right, I'm finally going to face this thing. I'm finally going to heal this thing. Or if it's from another lifetime, you're seeing these patterns come up in your life, like a scarcity pattern, for example. That's a common one. The scarcity patterns are coming up and you're like, this pattern keeps coming up, I need to heal it. And so then you start going through the motions of like whatever it is that you're doing to like process those things and those feelings and like change those patterns for yourself. Well, as you're doing that and you're healing that soul loss that you experienced, it starts to become a time where that soul loss, a soul fragment, we call it a soul fragment because it's like a part of your soul that just is sitting there waiting, like a piece of your soul, starts to be ready to be reintegrated, right? Because you're starting to do the healing work, like you're coming around to the time where you're doing the healing of the trauma. You're ready for whatever reason now, and you weren't before, to heal this trauma. And so that's the point at which you need to do a soul retrieval to call back the soul fragment that left during the soul loss period. Okay, so that's the idea of soul retrieval and soul loss. Is it can be anything. It can be other lifetimes. It can be like traumatic things that happen in other lifetimes, and that it's waiting for you to process in those lifetimes or in this lifetime. It can be anything throughout your lifetime. It does not, I just want to make it extra clear, it does not have to be a huge event. It can be like a microaggression or like a micro trauma or something really upsetting that happened to you and you like haven't been able to really process it. And it can be something that others would perceive as small, but was enough for you to like have to, it was like a trigger event where you were going to have to process and integrate and deal with that later. So it can be big things and things that I like to call micro traumas, or things that other people would perceive as not that big. And then what happens? That part of your soul that experienced that moment in that time and space separates, creates a fragment, and goes and be in this like little protective bubble waiting for you to come back and heal it. And so when this happens, sometimes what can happen is, and a lot of times what can happen is, things that you were like interested in, or giftings that you had, or abilities that you had, or like, let's say the trauma is attached to the sacral chakra, right? So maybe it was a childbirth trauma. And so this soul fragment left, had a childbirth trauma, left, and it affected the sacral chakra, right? So you now have a thing going on with your sacral chakra that needs healing, and you're working on healing it. And so then this can affect other areas of your life that affect the sacral chakra, like creativity, reproduction, sensuality, production. Anything that the sacral chakra affects can be affected here, because there is like this unresolved trauma in just one aspect of the sacral chakra, right? So this is why soul retrieval can affect other areas of your life, is because if you have these like soul fragments that have bubbled off and they are holding or related to any part of your energy body that relates to other gifts that you have, then it can happen that those gifts are having difficulties being expressed, right? That's just like a really simple example, because everything is so, it's like all interwoven and it's very individualized. Like every situation is different. But just to give you kind of an example of how having a soul loss that hasn't been resolved can affect other areas of your life, okay? So let's say you had a soul loss in another lifetime in which you were an herbalist, okay, and you were persecuted for your gifts, and during that soul loss period that was traumatic, and then that herbalist part of you, because it had a trauma to that gifting, those herbalist parts decided to separate and wait. So then you have these gifts, herbalism gifts from another lifetime, that are all bubbled off in a soul fragment that has yet to be retrieved, right? Because that soul fragment had a trauma related to those gifts, okay? And they're like waiting for you to retrieve them. So that is like another example of how giftings can be locked into soul fragments in other lifetimes or in this lifetime. So how do you know if you need a soul retrieval? Well, pretty much everyone needs one. But what do you need one for at this time? Like, it's like, what trauma have you been dealing with, or what is coming up for you that needs to be dealt with and that is like ready to be retrieved? What parts of yourself is ready to retrieve? Because all of us experience upsetting things throughout both this lifetime and other lifetimes. So there's like literally countless things that need to be soul retrieved, because each time it happens and we don't sit with it and process it, and this, like I said, it's not a blame issue of you like not processing your stuff. Like, life must go on, and your soul protects you by saving that little piece for when you're ready to deal with it, because you're not necessarily ready to process a trauma when it happens, right? So if we think about something that's very tangible and salient to right now, is March 2020, right? Like, how much of a trauma was that for you? Like, where were you in your life? How did that affect you? Like, what like triggering events happened to you that were upsetting in March 2020, right? For me, I had like a moment where I had postpartum depression and I tried to get help, and nobody would help me because of everything was shut down, and like nobody would accept new patients, nobody would see anybody. It was like the height of everyone is afraid. And when I finally went to urgent care, the person that I saw, the guy who I saw, suggested that I was making it up and like wouldn't help me. And I was like deep in postpartum depression. Like, that's why I was at urgent care, because it was urgent. And so that was really traumatic for me, because I'm sitting there and like, please help me. And this guy they sent in was like, have you suggested that it's not real? And it was like, that was a moment for me. And so that's something that I've been working on, like retrieving lately. So that's an example. So March 2020, like, what happened for you that was like really upsetting and you haven't fully processed yet? Because like right after I came home from that, like, I couldn't sit down and like fully digest and integrate and think about what happened, because when something happens to us, we're going on with life, we still need time to like integrate and process and think about what has happened, right? We're not ready to like fully think about like that incident and how it has affected us, right? So that's why like it happens, is that our soul says, hey, wait, like, we're going to save this because it's significant, and it's going to come up and you're going to deal with it, but we're going to set it here. And it's going to, when you're ready to process it, the soul piece is going to be ready to come back. It can be years, decades, it can be lifetimes, it can be months, it can be weeks. Like, it just really depends on what the thing is that you're retrieving and when that time is for you. So everyone needs one. It's just, what do you need one for? What do you need a soul retrieval for right now? Like, what thing is coming up for me to be healed that needs to be healed right in this moment? So what are some signs that you might need a soul retrieval? Like I said, everybody needs one. But like, what are some signs that like there's like a soul fragment that's like coming up, or many that are coming up that are like ready to be healed? One, a common one right now for a lot of people is having like repressed or latent gifts, and they feel blocked, or like there are these other gifts for them, like spiritual gifts, but they can't access them. That's a thing, like retrieving soul fragments from other lifetimes that are holding on to these gifts. That's an example. If you feel like you're having difficulty moving forward from a specific event, and like you like keep remembering that event, right, and replaying that event, it could be time that like that's time to retrieve that little bubble and bring it back with you and reintegrate it. I mean, generally, you just kind of know. Like, you know that, like, I had this thing happen, and I, like, just need to call this part of myself like something's missing, right? It's like this something's missing, and like it's almost like you have this feeling like I keep trying to like move forward, or I keep trying to do this thing, or I keep trying to like heal this pattern, or I keep coming into the same cycle, right, of some area of my life over and over and over again. And it's almost like you need this piece back so that you can like move through that cycle, or many pieces back so that you can move through this cycle. And it's not something you do one time and then you're done doing it. Like, it's like as you move through a healing journey for yourself, you're going to have things come up, and you're going to need to like do it again and again. Do a soul retrieval for yourself. You can do one for yourself, or like you can make an appointment with the shaman or somebody who does soul retrieval, and they can do it for you. I have a guided meditation in my shop that I just made, a sliding scale for $5 that like guides you through it. If you're in my shamanic healing class 2, do not buy it. It's in the course materials for that. My shamanic healing 2 class goes into this. Like, we do a whole soul retrieval and talk about this way more in depth. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, everyone needs one. The question is, what do you need one for at any specific time? Like, what is coming up for you that like needs to be addressed so that you can move forward? It's like if you feel lost or directionless, or like you keep getting stuck in the same patterns, like that's when you're really like, all right, what am I missing that like I need to face and deal with and integrate so that I can move forward and move past whatever I'm stuck by. That's how a soul retrieval can be helpful. And when you have one, like a lot of times there'll be more than just one soul fragment that comes forward. And you really don't want to force it. Like, the soul fragments that come forward in a soul retrieval are the ones that are ready to, and are ready to reintegrate because you've been doing the healing work, right? Or just ready to come forward at that time. But you're going to need, like, it doesn't stop there. Like, you don't stop with one, right? Like you, it's not like you just do one. You know, it's not like you could just clean your aura one time and you're like, I'm good for life. It's the same thing, right? Like, you're like, I'm going to clean the energy of my house once, and then I'm good for the rest of my life, right? It's a similar idea. Like, you do it when you need to do it, and like it's coming up for you. Now the caveat is, because it's basically has to deal with your soul and the spirit and body now, your spirit self and body now, it reintegrates to your spirit body, and then that makes a shift in your energy. Okay. So once it reintegrates in your spirit body, your energy is then going to shift to respond to that integration into your spirit body. And then, so then what can happen is, as your energy shifts to respond to that spirit shift, you will see most likely something in your physical body, because your energy shifted, that's connected to your physical body. And then you'll see some shift in your physical body. For most people, the most common like reactions to a soul retrieval are being extremely tired for a couple of days, or being extremely emotional for a couple of days. Because if you think about it, when you're calling back these soul fragments that left during a traumatic time, they still have unprocessed emotion from that time. And so when they reintegrate, that emotion has to then process through you. So it's like, when that time happened, when that thing happened and you reintegrate that soul fragment was carrying with them the emotions of that time that then has to then process through you. So the most common reaction is feeling really emotional and like really like teary or sad for no reason, because as that emotions process through you, you're going to experience that emotional release physically. It's technically you experiencing your own emotions in a delayed way, because you're experiencing the emotions that you still needed to experience from whatever that event was, but you're experiencing it now because you're ready and you've been doing the healing work, and like it's time to experience it. So those are the two most common things that happen after you do a soul retrieval: is you feel really sad or emotional, or like just emotional, just a lot of intense emotions, or you feel extremely tired, because with the energy shift is like your energy body has to rearrange, and that uses energy, so then you feel tired. So there's that. That's what a soul retrieval is. That's why you might need one. And then how do you do it? Like I said, it's a whole class, a shamanic healing class. We're going to cover this in shamanic healing too. But if you're like not there yet and you just want a soul retrieval and you're like, I'm not taking a shamanic healing class, I have a meditation for this, like a guided journey. It's the links in my bio. If you go to the link in my bio and go to guided journeys and meditations, the soul retrieval meditation, it's like, I've made it sliding scale, so it's $5. If you, it's $5 to $15 sliding scale. Or obviously you can pay somebody who does soul retrievals to help guide you through it, and then that might help you get more information regarding what those soul fragments are, what gifts they were storing, the triggering events, that sort of thing. Like, if so you pay somebody who does it, the only two people I can think of right now, like, I do them, and then Nancy Hess, SF Spirit House, she does them. I'm sure there's lots of people who do them. I'm blanking right now on it. But you can definitely do it yourself also. Like, it's not any less effective. You just might not get as much information about those soul fragments depending on like your experience level with meditation and journeying. Like, you could do it regardless of experience level, follow the meditation and the journey, and it will happen, but you just might not get as much information, right, as you might want to. So that's all. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about, because it's been coming up a lot lately and I've been doing a lot of them and I wanted to explain it, and I didn't want to write a blog about it. I'd just rather explain it. But that's all. Brittany, I'm going to save it in my feed or whatever, so as an IGTV video, so you can come back to it or share it or whatever. But like I said, if you want to do it and try your hand at giving yourself a soul retrieval, you absolutely can. I have a meditation for it. The link's in my bio. And it's at a sliding scale right now. So it's like, I've made it so it's $5. It used to be $20, but now it's $5 because people need some healing in their lives. And if you don't know where to start with March 2020, right? That was traumatic for everybody. And start with like what feels most salient to you from that time and that trauma that you experienced. I do that myself. Is that you, Lexi? I don't know if Crow Conjuring is Nancy or Lexi. But yeah, I do them also. I do them in the moon circle. So in my group healings, we're doing probably 2 this month. We're doing like Atlantis past life soul retrievals, and probably at least 2 we're doing this month in the group healings. So there's many ways for you to access the soul retrieval. But yeah. That's all. I have to go now because Tom wants to go outside with the children and play in the snow. See you guys later.